On this week of the podcast, we're going to be talking about practical ways you can leverage AI and how your accountant can help you. Now, to be honest, AI has been such a topic that people have been talking about for the last 7 months. It's been such a buzzword: AI this, AI that, ChatGPT this. And honestly, when it comes down to it, you really just need to understand how to practically use it for your business. So, on this week's episode, I'm going to share the tips that we have learned going through the process, how we use AI in our business, but more importantly, how your accountant can help you leverage and practically use AI. So stay tuned while we jump into this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You. I am Lola Turner, and I'm happy to be back with you guys this week for another episode. So, want to jump right into it because I think this is going to be a shorter episode than what we normally do. But I really just want to take some time to talk about practical ways that you can leverage AI and how your accountant can help you. Because let's be honest, I mean, if I'm being honest, I am so tired of hearing about AI this, AI that. There's been so many articles out there on just high level, is AI, coming to take over? Is it taking jobs? Blah, 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 whatever. And I think really at the end of the day, ChatGPT was such a big discussion a couple of months ago. And I love that I've seen people really leverage it and use it. But then I think for some people, it's been a turnoff, right? Because they're like, man, like here comes another technology, here comes another tool that we have to learn, that we have to use. But the reality is AI is here to stay. I mean, probably I would say over the last 5 years, it's become more prevalent and it's become more obvious in our day-to-day stuff and the tools that we have. I mean, Alexa, Siri is a form of AI. All of those are some sort of algorithm that is programmed to make our life easier. But when you think about in your business, how do you leverage AI and the AI algorithm to help you really practically execute on stuff in your business? I think before you even jump into La La Land on this, I think for us, the biggest thing I had to understand was, I've seen in conversations that I've had with several business owners and even just people who use AI individually, there's a couple of buckets of people. There are people who are just completely AI averse. They have no interest in learning any of the tools. They have no idea how they work, and they have no desire to even learn them. Then there's people that are on the other side of the spectrum, which is they just want to implement all of the AI tools in their business. They want to do it today, and they don't want anything to be manual, which I personally don't recommend. Then I would say there's people in the middle who are just like, okay, like I want to learn it. I want to know how it works because I don't want to be left behind, because they recognize that AI is here to stay. But at the same time, they either don't have the bandwidth or they just don't really know where to start, or they're kind of taking it one step at a time, which I think being in the middle is a good place to be, because when it really comes down to it, you don't want to be overly aggressive in implementation and rolling out these strategies, because the reality is you really need to take time to understand what works for your business. For example, for us, when ChatGPT came out, Terrell was like, hey, how do we figure out how we're going to use ChatGPT for our business? And he provided some really great ideas that I didn't even think about, because honestly, I was like, as an accountant, a lot of the stuff that we do is in Excel. A lot of the stuff that we do for our clients is in Google Sheets. So for us, how we ended up using ChatGPT was on our marketing and content strategy. So writing our copy, coming up with ideas of content topics specifically for targeting, our accounting people who needed accountants, our small business owner audience, sorry. And so really targeting and using AI when it came to the marketing content and the content strategies that we had for our business. And what that did, it did not take away the need for us to still understand our audience. It just provided an easy and less time spent on the content and the copy, and really allowed us to kind of just have a starting point. I think that's what I'd call it, is AI gives you a starting point. It takes all of the repetitive tasks and creates for you results that you can then use to turn around and say, okay, based on this data, what do I want to use it for? And I think this is probably a good transition into really understanding and defining what does your business need, right? And what tasks are being completed in your business? How can AI help you complete those tasks? And recognizing that AI is not a replacement through all aspects of your business. It's simply a tool to help reduce the time or help facilitate things for you. So I think a lot of times people get confused, the people that, go happy go lucky and just want to go implement it all. But the reality is, if you do not have, I think this is so important, if you do not have solid processes that exist and you try to go implement AI or different processes in your business, it's going to be a disaster because the AI takes the information that you give and it spits it out. So if you give it nonsense, it's going to spit out nonsense back to you. So that's one thing to understand is you can't fully eliminate the human intelligence that's required, whether it's building a solid process, whether it's having a clear understanding of exactly what you wanted to provide. I'll give you an example for us. For this episode, just as an example, if I was to go to, after I finish recording this, I would say something to the tune of to ChatGPT, hey, I did an episode on, practical ways to leverage AI and how your accountant can help based on this information and target audience of business owners who have an accountant that make between 2 to 3 million a year. Give me copy that I can use on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Now, the AI, of course, ChatGPT will do is they'll give me several options of copy. Then from there, because I know our audience, I can say, this is a little bit too, formal. I'll say, hey, Instagram is a little bit too formal. Can you modify it? So at the end of the day, what you put in, you just get a refined product or automated product or result back, but you have to put in good information. You can't just put in nonsense because at the end of the day, you're going to get nonsense back. So extremely important that you understand what tasks are available and what tasks you can leverage AI for in your business. And then the second thing is understanding that if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. So you want to make sure that you have clear processes on whatever you decide to use it for. Be very clear in communicating because again, AI is just going to give you what you put in. Now, another thing I want to talk about is leveraging your accountant to help you use AI when it comes to your finances. Now, when it comes to technology, I think a running joke in the accounting community has been, that robots are going to replace accountants. And while I think that's funny, I do think there is some truth to it. Now, I would say this before I make the statement I'm going to make. There's some truth to it if you are functioning as an accountant who still operates in the 1980s kind of accounting. And I'll give some context. And before accounting Excel existed, you had to do everything on, I think my dad used to have like those red books that he would use to do checks and balances on transactions. And I remember when I was a kid, when I was about 11 years old, I would go with him to the office sometimes over the weekend, and he had to do some reconciliations and do month-end close and close the books and balance everything for the company that he worked for. And sometimes I go with him to the office, and literally he would spend hours working off of a book, a ledger, basically, that had the debits and the credits. And that's how accounting was done in that age. If you have an accountant that is still doing accounting like that, then listen, absolutely 1,000%, it's probably time to switch over to some sort of technology and some sort of tool. Because if you still have an accountant that is doing that is not leveraging a tool like QuickBooks or is not leveraging a tool like Zero or does not push you to have your stuff in a consolidated place, that is a problem within itself. And I think this is probably a good time if you are in that situation to have that conversation. And for you, if you are in a situation where your business is small enough where you're like, I just need someone to do the accounting at a very basic level, just to compile my transactions, add it all in an Excel file, drop it in somewhere, then someone's going to do my taxes. That is all well and good. But one of the things that I will tell you, and I've seen this for $750 million businesses where they are literally still taking the receipts and they are inputting transactions in QuickBooks, not even QuickBooks. They're inputting transactions in an Excel sheet. They're totaling it, and that's how they keep track of their expenses. I've actually seen situations where they're keeping the receipts for the expenses and they're putting it in a book and then taking that book at the end of the year to their tax accountant. Can you imagine how much people are probably paying for that? Now, if you are in a situation where you are doing that or you are spending time with an accountant that does that, I'm being honest with you, it is probably time for you to switch over to another accountant, or it's time for you to switch over to QuickBooks. And the reason I say this is because, being completely honest, it is an absolute waste of time. And the reason I say that is because if I remember, and I'll speak specifically because this is a prospective client that we worked with. When she reached out to me, she said, I was like, okay, so how do you currently manage your company? How do you currently manage your expenses? She said, my husband does, because they own a couple of businesses. And she said, at the end of the year, like maybe March timeframe, my husband will sit down and go through all of the expenses in the account related to personal. He'll exclude those. He'll look at the business expenses. He'll do a tally on an Excel spreadsheet of what all of this should cost. Then he'll put it in a QuickBooks, or no, you put it in an Excel file, and then that will be the expenses for the business. Thankfully, I think they were using Zelle or some sort of like PayPal tool. So they were at least able to see the revenue payments coming from there. And then they'll do that tally. And then from that tally, they'll come up with what their expenses were, how much they owed. But this was in March. This was in March of the new year, which means they had no sort of idea and concept of how their business did for the entire year. Because how do you even review if you're combining your personal and your business expenses? How do you even review how your business is performing financially at any point? So if you're doing your own bookkeeping, I implore you to please consider using a tool like QuickBooks that is going to give you the information that you need. If you have an accountant and your accountant is still stuck in the Stone Age, that's an exaggeration. If your accountant is still manually doing your bookkeeping, strongly consider switching accountants. And the reason I say this is no knock against your accountant. If you are in a situation where, you know what, I don't really need to see monthly how my business is performing, I'm okay, it's a passive, or I like where my business is, I haven't had any issues so far, then fine. But if you are really looking to grow your business and to create a legacy and to leave something for your generation and for your family and to really have success, you need to see your numbers just more than once a year. Because one of the things that no matter what business owners tell me, when I have conversations with those business owners who are doing everything manually or have an accountant that's doing everything manually and they only get to see it once a year, you can tell they are incredibly frustrated for two reasons. One, because it's such a cumbersome process. You have all of these transactions you have to speak to and understand from a year ago. And a lot of people don't even remember what happened 6 months ago or 3 days ago. Then you have two, the tax season is just horrible because now, like he was sitting down in March knowing that they had to get their taxes filed by April. So you're either making mistakes or you're having to have your tax accountant extend the deadline or file for an application to extend the deadline because you're not getting your stuff and your expenses in on time. And it also increases the chances of you making mistakes. So there's all of those reasons, which is why I say, as a business owner, partnering with your accountant to really understand, how do we do this better? And if you are in any of the situations that I mentioned, whether you have an accountant or you're doing it by yourself, it is extremely important that you strongly consider switching to an AI algorithm or a tool that has an AI algorithm that can help you do that. One of the cool things about QuickBooks, it's not perfect, which is why I think you need an accountant. One of the tools, cool features of QuickBooks is the auto rule. And I believe Zero does that. We just use QuickBooks, is the auto rule, which is where if you have certain transactions, let's say you buy from specific vendors, your products, you can set it up as an auto rule where every single time a transaction hits for that specific category, it classifies it to a specific transaction. It classifies it to cost of sales. So, every single time when those transactions come through, they're being properly classified. But one of the things that I said, one of the reasons why I said you need an accountant is because there are a lot of things and regulations that change or different ways that different expenses should be handled. And you need either the expertise or you need to hire someone that has the expertise to manage that. One of the areas where I've seen mistakes made pretty often is property management companies or real estate companies that manage property. One of the things that oftentimes gets mistaken is they'll take the entire payment for a mortgage on a property and they will classify that as an expense, which is wrong. So if you're just a business owner and you're saying, okay, fine, I paid a mortgage, $2,000 is what I paid, this is all the expense, it's absolutely wrong because you're not supposed to do that, because part of that is going towards the principal payment, part of that is going towards interest, part of that is going towards insurance. And so you need to be able to understand that from an accounting standpoint and even from a tax standpoint, you cannot recognize the payment on interest as an expense. You can recognize the interest portion, you can recognize the insurance, but there's specific stuff like I just mentioned, you cannot recognize. And how would you know that if you are not an accountant or you didn't study? So all that to say that I think at the end of the day, accountants are not going to stop being relevant because there is an aspect of the analysis and there's an aspect of the insight that they provide value in. So if you are so quick to just say, you know what, I just think I have this tool now, I don't need to hire an accountant, I would caution you with that statement. And the reason why I would is for two reasons. One is because, like I mentioned, there are specific rules and regulations that your accountant should know how to manage. Now, the tax stuff, you probably need a tax accountant to give you insight on that. Like, for example, for, I think 2024, effective 2023, meals and entertainment, so money that you're spending in your business on food is no longer going to be allowable for deductions in your taxes. So that's something a tax accountant should know. That's something they can tell you. And the second thing is if you're growing your business, you just do not have time and you do not have the bandwidth to spend time going through each of your transactions, figuring out what is what, right? And so that is the reason why I say I personally think deciding not to hire an accountant because you now have this AI tool. I personally do not think that is wise. Now, I say all of this I'm going to provide some context in proper context. If you have a business that's doing less than $100,000, then you probably don't need an accountant, just being honest. Now, if you see that the business and your trajectory of your business is growing and you want to make an investment because you know what, I want to make sure that I'm doing this properly as my business grows, then it probably makes sense to just pay someone on a contractor basis to help you set up your chart of accounts, to help you set up your processes to begin with. And then as your business starts to grow, you have a solid foundation. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, processes are important. So if you don't establish those processes in the front end and that system in the front end, then your business is going to suffer and you don't want that to happen. So ultimately, at the end of the day, if I was to conclude this, I would say AI, of course, is here to stay. Everybody knows that. I think the most important thing as a business owner is really understanding how AI can serve your business specifically so that you're not just jumping in and using it in areas where it doesn't really add value to your business. And then the third thing I would say is when it comes to being a business owner and using AI to help, manage and navigate your financial side of your business, it's going to really come down to partnering with the accountant in your business to understand, hey, are you spending more time on the transactional side of my business going forward? Because of course, in the beginning, depending on how you had a structure set up, it's going to require time and effort to clean things up, to set things up. But going forward, is your accountant spending time on things that are adding value to your business versus just transactional activity? And AI is a great way for them to be able to automate some of those transactions so that they can focus on really reviewing and providing valuable insight to you. And I want to make sure, and that point that I do point out is you also have to level and understand what you're paying for. So if you are expecting your accountant to do a cash flow forecast for you and you're not paying a cash flow forecast, then probably need to level set your expectations. And so at the end of the day, all going back to it, as your business is growing, you need to learn how to adapt because like I said, AI is here to stay. We need to learn how to use it, but more importantly, we need to learn how to use it effectively in the way that drives our business in the best possible way to make sure that we're maximizing our profits. So hopefully that's been a insightful episode for you this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Let's be honest, AI, the whole concept, it's just a buzzkill. I mean, everybody's talking about AI, but really at the end of the day, I think when it comes to leveraging AI, I would say the most important thing you need to focus on are two factors. One, as a business owner, especially on the financial side, you want to make sure that you're working with someone who is leveraging AI in their accounting firm to properly give you insights. If you are paying for financial insights and you're paying for financial feedback and you're paying for somebody to be in the passenger seat, giving you insight on how to make decisions on your in your business on a weekly, on a monthly basis, then you need to make sure that your accountant is spending less time on the transactional side of the business and more time on the strategic side, giving you insights that can help you understand where your business is going and understand with the market how to combine those two together to make effective decisions. I would say the second thing when it comes to leveraging AI practically in your business is understanding how the AI benefits your business. So you don't want to just jump in and implement every single thing that's on the market. You want to understand how do you take the AI data or the algorithm that's available and leverage that to help drive your business forward. And I'm going to add one more tip. If you have a crappy process and you're trying to transition to AI, just remember that garbage in is garbage out. So you need to ensure that before you transition or move anything or move tasks to an AI portal or system or algorithm, that you have a solid system and a solid process in place to make sure that you are getting the most value of the AI tool that you're using. All right. Thanks, John Malie. Let's get it done. Ooh.